Hello again, and welcome to the second segment of our two-part series about navigating the maze to find our boat. And if you haven't seen the first part yet, you really should watch it first, and here's a link to take you right there.
All set? Great. And for those of you who've already watched it, here's a brief recap. We want to take a voyage around the planet, so we needed to find a boat. We started with motor yachts, but the fuel costs were outrageous, so we moved on to sailboats. Then, we had to choose between a cat and a monohull. We made a video about that choice. Here's that link.
After looking at all the manufacturers, we found that the cost of new cats, even charter market versions, were now too rich for our pocketbook. So we started looking into used performance cats and got interested in a half-finished Kurt Hughes boat. But that fell through, since we had not saved enough cash to finish it yet. Then we looked into building our own DIY cat from scratch. But that turned out to be too much work. Finally, we looked at kit catamarans and thought that this finally might be our path out of the maze and to sailing around the world.
As you're about to see, there were still some major twists and turns to come with some major monsters to face.
Yeah, back then, when we stopped, we were still in the maze, although we thought we had gotten out when we found that Schionning boat. But we're just going to go back to where we were, and that was 10 years in the past, and you'll find that there are some big twists to come.
After really considering the idea of building a kit catamaran, we learned that it would take about 10,000 man-hours to complete. That's a lot of time and work. We were also looking at the design of those previous models from Schionning. Now, mind you, those are very nice catamarans, and a lot of folks have built them and love their boats. However, we are looking for something a little different. We plan to live on our boat for a long time. The models they offered back then, like the Aero and G-Force lines, are very fast cats, but they do lack a little on the comfort side. That's understandable, they were built for speed. Our research showed us that though speed is very desirable, comfort is king. The statistics bear us out on this. Most folks spend at least 80% of their time on anchor. If we built a Schionning Performance Kit Catamaran, we would end up with a fast and seaworthy boat, but one without much in the way of comfortable living space or load-carrying capacity for sailing around the planet. It would be a great boat to race and wonderfully fun for day or weekend sailing trips, but not what we are looking for in a comfortable cruising sailboat.
We had a new fork in the path to consider. Would we be better off with a used, comfortable production cat or a new kit catamaran from Schionning? It was a difficult choice, with both having their advantages. We liked the speed of the Schionning Designs, and having built the boat ourselves, we would know her inside and out. On the other hand, used production boats were built for comfort, though quite slow in sailing.
Normally, that's not a big deal if you don't really want to sail long distances at speeds much higher than 10 knots. That's too hard on the captain, crew, and the boat. However, what you gain with speed are two main factors. One is being able to outrun bad weather, and the other is that you may sail at around wind speed in light air. By then, you would be motoring if you had one of those heavy, slow production comfort cats. But, and this is a big one, if we bought a used boat and spent 6 months refitting her, we would be out on the oceans 1.5 years sooner than if we built a kit boat. The cost is about the same. We can buy a used boat for less than it costs to build the kit boat, but by the time we do a refit, they will cost about the same amount.
So, it came down to getting out on the water sooner for the same price by sacrificing sailing in light winds with a new boat. It was a conundrum. In the end, by a hair, we decided to go with the used comfort production cat, though we really wish we could have the speed of a Schionning boat with dagger boards instead of mini keels. Having decided to look at used production comfort catamarans again, now we had to decide on what size boat to seek.
Not far ahead, we came to a three-way intersection. The right would take us to large used catamarans, the center to mid-sized, and the left to smaller catamarans. Our research showed that we should be looking for a 44 to 50 foot catamaran, but Every foot you add to the waterline of a catamaran makes it exceedingly more expensive. For example, if you found a 42-foot boat for, say, $300,000, when you go up to a 46-foot boat, you would be at $450,000. And by the time you got up to a 50-foot boat, you'd be well over $1 million. So you can see it really adds a lot for every foot you go. So therefore, we really had to stick with a little bit of the lower end of the range of boats that we would really want, the 44 to 48 foot range. If we got to 50 foot, it was just going to be too expensive, even though that's what we would really prefer. 44 feet is our smallest length simply because that's the shortest boat that we would consider using to cross an ocean. Now, don't get uppity. I know that there have been people out there who sailed 37 to 39 foot boats across oceans, but from comfort reasons, we choose that we want to have that 44 foot length. The reason for our upper limit being 50 feet is that means your boat width is around 25 feet. And that's the most we can have and still make it through some of the locks in Europe that we want to go through. So that kind of limits our upper end. So therefore, we want something between 44 and 50. But from a price standpoint, 44 to 48 is most likely where we would have to buy.
We decided that the center path would have to do, though midsize was a compromise to the lower end of our desired length. But we soldiered on into the maze toward finding a 44 to 48 foot used comfort catamaran. We had left performance far behind us now, back at the fork in the maze. A little disheartened, we decided to reevaluate our goals in finding a cat by creating a short list of what we really must have to accomplish our goal of sailing around the planet. Here's that short list. Number 1, we know we will have a larger than average crew, around 3 to 6 people on board, sometimes even more, so we need enough living space for our crew. Number 2, our crew will be scuba divers, which means we need a dive compressor on board, plus all the dive gear for at least 4 crew. That means our cat needs to have good load carrying capacity. Number 3, going around the world, we will be in both hot and cold climates, so we will want AC for cooling and heating, which means we need more power. We want to circumnavigate, so the boat we choose must be seaworthy enough to sail all the way around the world twice through any conditions. And number 5, any boat we consider must be within our limited budget. So now we knew that we had to find a path that would lead us to a catamaran that achieved all 5 of these basic requirements. We soon discovered a new intersection in the maze. Here, we had to choose the age of our used catamaran. On the right was the newer cats, 2 to 7 years of age. Those were the most desirable, but being newer would cost the most. Our second option was older cats, 14 to 20 years long in the tooth. The problem with these cats was design. Modern cruising cats of decent design haven't been made for that long, no more than around 20 years, so going to older cats meant getting a lot poorer design. That left the final option, 8 to 13-year-old cats. These were new enough to have decent designs, but less expensive. There really wasn't much choice at our budget, so we took that third route to the 8 to 13-year-old models. So now we came to a fork in the path between ex-charter market boats and privately owned used cats. This was a tough one. We really wanted to take the privately owned path, as the boats would likely be in much better shape, but the charter market boats would be far less money. But those boats tend to be used hard and put away wet. So, with a heavy heart, we turned left down the path toward the older, smaller, used comfort cats at a price we could afford, the ex-charter boats, though we secretly hoped to discover a privately owned one at a good price.
Comfort production catamarans often get a bad rap as they're built to get the lowest possible price point.
And lagoons are famous for this. They are both the least expensive and most comfortable catamarans around.
So, are comfortable production catamarans bad boats?
No, not at all. For their intended use, they're just fine. In fact, when we look at lagoons, only their model, the 450, had any issues, and really, that's just an anomaly. They've already fixed that by sending kits out to people who own 450s to fix the bulkhead repair. And the rest of their models have been fine. As long as you're sticking to trade wind routes and being careful not to hit things, they're going to be fine. However, if you do want to take them to a little bit more extreme conditions, that's still possible. You can upgrade the bulkheads a little bit, do a few other upgrades to things like backing plates for the various cleats and such, and you can upgrade that boat. In fact, Catamaran Impy did this, and they have sailed in some pretty nasty seas, including, down in the roaring 40s. So, the comfort catamarans are perfectly capable and safe boats to sail around the world.
At that time, You could buy this kind of used old comfort charter cat in a 48-foot model for around $350,000, leaving us $150,000 for the refit. We now found ourselves back at an early part of the maze. We're walking in circles. We returned to the room with the Catamaran Brands. This time we went straight to the center door and looked at used lagoon catamarans. The issue for us was not bulkhead problems. That problem showed up later on the 450. What kept us from choosing a used lagoon was that the models that we were considering did not have sacrificial keels. We just didn't want to be concerned about hitting something with a keel and putting a major hole in the boat. I should mention, if you are careful not to hit things, most likely your lagoon will be fine. Just consider this. All monohulls are worse off since if you put a hole in the hull, the heavy keel will take that boat to the bottom in just a few minutes. Even lagoons are much better than that if holed. I'm not trying to complain about monohulls. My only point is that if they can safely sail the oceans, then so can lagoons. But for us, that closed the lagoon door, so we had to choose another door in the maze. Next, we opened the door to Leopards. The older models had frequent slamming due to low bridge deck clearance. However, newer designs fixed that issue. Then, Leopard came out with their forward cockpit, and that looked mighty comfortable. When you are at anchor, and you are most of the time, the boat generally swings to face the wind. That means the rear cockpit has little airflow and can be a hot place in the tropics. That forward cockpit is right there in the cool breeze. When we were ready to buy, the oldest of these new models would be about 8 years old, which might get them into our price range. Sure, people worry about the forward cockpits filling with green water and rough seas, but there have been enough of these Leopard models sailed now through terrible conditions to put worry to bed. They drain fast enough not to be an issue. However, something else came to our attention that kept us from going with a Leopard. They are not designed to be beached on their keels. The manual tells you that they must be supported at the bulkheads. Since we plan to travel to some places where we will have no choice but to beach the boat as the tide goes out, this was a non-starter, and that closed the door on Leopards. That left the doors that led to other production cats, like Bally, Nautilus, and Fontaine Peugeot. We didn't even open the door to Bally and Nautilus boats because, just like the Katanas, they do not offer a helm position we prefer. They tend to have separate exposed helms toward the stern sugar scoops, or flybridge helms that raise the boom too high, making it difficult to reach and less efficient in sailing. What we want is a semi-raised, protected helm position which keeps the boom lower down. But we did try some other doors. The privilege door led to some nice cats. The newer models looked good, but they were far too expensive, and the older ones had sloped windows that gave a greenhouse effect and lacked good visibility forward from inside the salon. So we closed that door. We tried the Antares door next. These are well-respected cats, mostly for their build quality. However, we found them to be an older design with a galley down, and the size of an Antares is a little too small for our larger crew. Not to mention, they are expensive, even used. So that was another closed door. Now we opened the door to Fontaine Peugeot, which are French-made boats. We soon discovered that some of their models fit a lot of our 5 required items list. We started thinking that these boats might be our path out of the maze. They had the right helm position, and they were designed to be beached on their keels, which are also sacrificial. The windows are fairly upright for less greenhouse effect and gave good visibility all around from the salon. They also had an up galley, which we prefer. Now, like all production comfort cats, the hulls of the Fontaine Peugeot boats are fairly wide. This is to gain living space and add load carrying capacity in shorter boats. For example, a Selina 48 can carry up to 9,000 pounds. However, that makes these cats have more of a displacement hull. And boats like a Selina 48 generally cannot exceed hull speed unless they are surfing down a wave. Fully loaded, most of the time they're going to sail around 8.5 knots maximum, since they are a 47-foot long boat. However, other than speed, which was not an essential item on our list, the Selina 48 did achieve every other element we had listed. They have enough load carrying capacity for our crew, food, AC, and sports equipment needs. They would be seaworthy enough after a serious refit. They have a protected helm and can be beached on their sacrificial keels. Basically, they are a slower, comfortable, capable boat, and best yet, they were available at a price we could afford. For the next few years, we thought we had beaten the maze and found our boat. We planned to purchase a Selina 48 once we saved up enough money for the purchase and the major refit to get her ready for blue water sailing. All we had to do was find a Selina for $300,000 to $350,000 and then do a major refit of $150,000 to $200,000. That would put us right on budget at around $500,000, ready to go round the world. All we had to do was save the rest of that money and get to retirement age, and then head out on our voyage. But that tricky maze had us fooled again, and here we thought we were clear of the damn thing. Right when things seemed the brightest, we suddenly discovered that escaping the maze had all been an illusion. We were still in the maze, and worse yet, 2 monsters were now loosened there, hunting us. The first monster showed its ugly eye in 2017. That destructive creature was named Hurricane Irma, and she was a bitch. She did untold damage to the Caribbean, and as part of that destruction, the hurricane destroyed hundreds of catamarans in the charter market. That was because Irma hit the British Virgin Islands head-on, the capital of the catamaran charting operations in the world. Hundreds of cats were destroyed. That devastating loss would now affect the price of used and even new catamarans for years to come, since there would be so many fewer boats on the used market, and the new build slots were full trying to replenish the lost charter market boats.
After Hurricane Irma, we were practically in despair at finding a used boat at a decent price. But we thought we might be able to outwit that dang monster and sneak around the maze the long way.
We still had a few years before we could save up enough money to buy our cat and retire.
And we hope that by then, the boats coming out of charter might lower the prices back down a little bit. So, we waited. But that's when an even nastier and deadlier monster started stalking us through the maze, and his name was COVID-19.
That rampaging and deadly pandemic changed many things for the worse. As you all know, it cost the world a lot of sickness and death. And though our trials to find a boat to purchase are nothing compared to the tragedies people face due to COVID, it did have a negative effect on our dream of sailing around the world as well. During the COVID years, for reasons we cannot fathom, the price of used catamarans jumped off the charts. Even stranger, most of the used boats sold, and there were hardly any used cats available. I could not understand it. All the countries you could cruise to on a yacht were closed. Why were people suddenly buying up all the boats? Regardless, the used market for a Selina 48 jumped in price by 200,000 seemingly overnight. Now, even an 8 to 13-year-old used Selina was beyond our budget, as were almost all catamarans. For a while, we couldn't even find a cat we would want to own for sale at any price. Even if we found an 8 to 13-year-old cat and purchased it for the exorbitant price of $550,000, we would not have enough money left over to do the refit and make that old boat capable of sailing around the planet. After a refit, the total cost would be around $750,000, which was well beyond our budget. So once again, the path to our goal of sailing a cat around the planet was blocked. We could no longer afford even a middle-aged, used, comfort production catamaran, and we didn't want a really old cat. So now, we were once again wandering in a daze through the dark maze, wondering if a path to our dream even existed. That's when we happened to circle back around to a fork in the path we had already found years ago, the DIY path to building your own boat. Previously, we had never found a DIY catamaran design that we really liked, but that was years ago now, so we wondered if a company might have come up with a more modern design that would better fit our needs.
The issue about building a boat from scratch is all the extra time involved.
First of all, you spend a lot of time just studying the plans before you even can get started. With a kit boat, you get started day one. That's the beautiful part about a kit, is that there's everything included already, all the jigs, everything, so that you can get right to work assembling the boat.
So we turned back down the Kit Catamaran path, like we had previously done, and started doing new research into the designers and all their new models. Now we had a glimmer of hope in the dark maze, and thought we could just get a glimpse down the path to our ultimate goal. Of course, we still had to find the right Kit Catamaran, if one even existed. Our goal was to find a kit for a performance catamaran that had narrow hulls, dagger boards, a semi-raised helm, kick-up rudders, and all the comfort area we need for our larger crew.
Of course, there is no free lunch. If we could find such a kit catamaran, we knew we would have to pay in blood, sweat, and a lot of tears to build the boat.
Yeah, and it takes 2 years for us to build it, and that's 10,000 man-hours of labor. So a lot of work. But we do end up with a safe 50-foot performance cruising catamaran with a hybrid system. So it's worth the effort.
Now that we decided that a kit catamaran was the only remaining path to our goal, we headed that direction with some speed. But we were not home free yet. We still had to find a model we liked from a manufacturer we would have to trust with our money and lives. So choosing the right boat to build was a seriously challenging feat. Once again, we had many doors to open and explore. This time, the center door was Schionning Designs, as they are the largest seller of kit catamarans. We had researched all their boats years ago. All their models are well-built, safe, fast boats, and you cannot beat the support that Schionning Designs offers their DIY builders. When we went back to look at their website, I recalled a more recent model they added later called the Legend 60. That model had been more in the direction we seek, but at 60 foot long, she was too large of a boat for the things we want to accomplish. Still, we were hoping that they might have added a new, similar, but somewhat smaller model which might better fit our needs. To our joy, we discovered a new boat they had added, the Solitaire 1490. At 49 feet, she is right about the length we want. She's billed by Schionning as a fast cruiser, which is exactly what we were seeking. The boat has a large salon, large cockpit, semi-raised helm position, dagger boards, you name it. All the stuff we're looking for in a cat. This was the boat we had been looking for years. She was like the HH55, but at a price we could afford. This was a brand new design. In fact, hull number 1 is not even finished yet, and hull number 2 has just gotten started. Being newly designed, she has a lot of modern features, like flush hatches and much more. Best yet, even with all those comfort features, the Solitaire 1490 is a performance catamaran at a price we can afford. That boat was a dream come true. I immediately fell in love. There was so much to like about the Schioning's new design that I was ready to buy one right away. I knew that at last we had finally navigated our way out of the maze and found that catamaran we would purchase. This was the boat we wanted at a price we could afford. But being a crazy person, I thought, what if I could make this boat even better? What I mean is, better for our needs. So I left that door open, but turned to the other option in the room, a door marked semi-custom. Each person has their own idea of specific options on a boat. Think of it like buying a new house. After you select the model, you get to choose things like carpet or hardwood floors. You get to decorate and put your own choices of furniture, cabinetry, etc. However, it's still the same house. But I wondered if I might tweak just a few more things. And it just so happened that I am a designer and a modeler. So I took their CAD renders from the Schionning Design website and used them to approximate the 3D structure of the 1490. Then I started making some minor changes to see if I couldn't tweak this great boat and get it to match my particular needs. I think it is important to note that my concept model changes don't make this a better boat. The 1490 is awesome as she comes. What my changes reflect are my own desires for our specific needs. So this model is better for us, but not necessarily better for you. The good news is that you will now have the chance to pick from 2 great choices. You can decide which model best fits your needs. If you want a detailed walk through all the changes I made to the Solitaire 1490, watch our virtual tour video where we walk around and inside my concept model. You can find that video by clicking on this link or by using the one I put down in the description. However, please remember that Schionning is a kit boat seller. That means they have designed many great kits and you purchase the kit you want to build. They're not out to create a custom boat for each customer. Having said that, they do offer you a decent number of customizations on all their models, like the furniture layout. That can be changed to what you want since the furniture placement is not structural. Schionning is perfectly willing to work with you on those kinds of alterations.
So after all of those trials through the maze, we finally found our boat and we bought it. So next up, we're going to build it. And we want to invite all of you to come along through all of these videos as we construct the boat, take her on sea trials, and then head out across the world on our double circumnavigation.
Just hit the like and subscribe buttons, and don't forget to tap the bell icon so you know when our next video releases.
Well, if you're interested in joining us as part of our crew, just pop by our website and go to the Join Crew link.
And don't forget to comment. We love to hear your thoughts on our videos and ideas.
Yep, and our video next week is going to be all about actually purchasing the boat, how we went through it, what all of the things we need to do and get. Don't want to miss that one. See you then.